Hello, hello, and welcome. Welcome back. Yes, you have tuned in to Misfit. Start living and thriving now with me, your host, your hostess, Dr. Natalie Forrest. And as you can see, I have another guest today. Today, my guest is a dear friend of mine, I dare say, even though we only talk to each other every once in a while. Her name is Anita Casalina. And I want to not waste any time. I want to get right into her, even though there are a lot of other really cool shows on Transformation TV, and go and check it out. But right now, stay here because you're in for a special treat. As I said, Anita and I, we don't talk that often, but sometimes you meet people and you just have a connection with that person. So you don't always need to be on the phone once a week, twice a week. Every now and then, just a little hello is really all it takes. And when I started this show, one of the first people that came to my mind was Anita. So let me tell you a little bit about her. She has a highly distinguished resume, and I actually forgot half of what she was doing before I reread the bio, and I know why I resonate with her. So Anita Casalina has had 2 careers spanning many decades. I guess that means she's older than she looks. As a filmmaker and as a counselor or healer. In both, she has focused on ways to help people and make the world better. Through her private practice, healing books, and retreats, she helped hundreds of people. And she hasn't just helped past tense, but she continues to help every single day. In 2012, she founded Billions Rising, a Self-Reliance Foundation to highlight global programs, organizations, and projects. And all of them promote sustainable solutions to end poverty. She created the BlogTalk Radio show, Billions Rising, and the interviews from that show were the basis for her best-selling book, Billions Rising, Empowering Self-Reliance. She has done a number of other things, and what caught my attention is her involvement in the civil rights movement as well. She is from Oakland, California. She has witnessed a lot. She has participated a lot. And all of that got her, drove her, inspired her rather recently to create a feature documentary, which is called Imaginary Walls, a film about healing racism. And that just touched my heart. She does so many other things that I want to jump in, but I'm stopping myself right now because I want her to tell you all about it. She also has been happily married. She has 2 grown children, and we were just chit-chatting a little bit about how mothers remain mothers all of our lives. So welcome, Anita. Thank you so much for being here.
Oh, hi, Natalie. It's so good to see you again. Thank you so much for having me.
I know it's been a while. It's been Hawaii a number of years ago.
It's been quite a while, but you're right. We have a connection that's very special, and it can be months and months before we talk to each other, and suddenly there's a little spark, and we say, "Hey, how are you?" And there's just a knowingness.
Yeah, which is amazing. But of course, you're spiritual. You're a healer on the small level of person to person, but also on the big level, worldwide, global healing. So let me start just by asking you, how did you realize your gifts and talents and that you were, in a sense, called to walk this path?
As a healer, you mean? I think it just began calling to me at such a young age because I wanted to help people from the time I was really, really small. And I think I mentioned growing up in Oakland, California, because there's significance there. There is such a gradation sociologically and socioeconomically. And I would see very poor people, and I would take the bus with my mom from where we lived in sort of the foothills down into downtown Oakland. And as we headed down and out of the hills, I would see more and more poor people entering bus, most of them people of color, African American people. I would just look at them with just this tenderness, even as a 4-year-old, and think, I wonder what could be done to help them, And we had a housekeeper. Now, I've never told this story before. So we had a housekeeper named Alma, who I just fell in love with. She was my second mom for a long time, as we were privileged where we were. We had this woman come in who would help. And she was very poor, and she would share stories with me about her life and poverty and what it was like. And so I got this sort of firsthand feeling about, people really struggle. And just because I had all the food on the table that we had, and we always had this very comfortable life, there were people right outside the door who were having a very hard time putting food on the table and taking care of their children and all of that. So it's been my whole life. I did get involved with the civil rights movement, like you said, because it was happening all around me when I was a young person. And I've kept going all this time. So it was a very, very early kind of calling. I went ahead. I'll keep going with the story if you don't mind.
Yeah, no, please do.
My dad always said, be an attorney like me, inherit the law practice, whatever. And I was like, okay. So I was pre-law at UC Davis for as long as I could tolerate it. But the black and white of the law it just didn't work for me. The gray area was missing. And I really needed that grayness. I needed something that was like
the muddiness in between.
Yeah, the malleableness that you can find when you really look at the world. It's like, it's kind of like that, but it's a little like this. So I ended up getting a degree in psychotherapy. And like I said, I've had these two careers. One is where I've helped people on a one-on-one basis, where I started a healing center here in Marin County and worked one-on-one with people. But the other was, as an even younger person, once I graduated, I thought, I think I could do even more with the media. I can reach more people with the media. So I began doing social change programming. And it wasn't until I had my children, this is how we were having our discussion about being mothers. It wasn't until I had my two very intense, strong children who needed me so much that I knew I needed to stay home more than I was able to if I was on the road working on programs and films and that sort of thing. So I thought, I can help people one-on-one. So that's when I started the Healing Center. And as the children grew up and didn't need me in that way anymore, I still remember sitting at my window in the Healing Center looking out going, okay, there's a big world out there. I think I need to go back out and work that's broader and more global. And
so let me jump in here. Let me jump in real quick, because there are two things that you said that are really fascinating.
Yes.
One is you taking the bus, right? And the only reason why it's fascinating is because it reminded me of when I used to live in Washington, D.C.
Mm-hmm.
And you have probably been to more places than I have been. I know from Europe, we take a lot of bus and other metro transportation. When I was in DC, I was observing it because I would get on the bus here and drive through DC. And as you said, in one area, there would be all, for example, Black people, lower class. Then as you drive further, all of a sudden you see all sort of different groups come in all in suit and ties. And then you drive further, you have no more Blacks on. It was like really fascinating, especially not being from this country. So is that what you witnessed too then, that it's changed for wherever you went?
Going through different neighborhoods. And I have to say, here's the irony. Why were we taking the bus? Because we were going downtown to meet my dad, to have lunch with him, and then we would drive around in his Cadillac. So, see what I'm saying about growing up with privilege, but being a participant observer in that way, to be able to, it was, to me, I look back on this bus taking as it gave me exposure to other people that if my mother had had a Cadillac herself and driven downtown, I wouldn't have known. I wouldn't have seen. I wouldn't have sat next to somebody on the bus. I was always really, really wanted the elders to sit next to me or other children, whatever. I wouldn't have known about any of those people because I would have been sheltered much more than I was. So, taking the bus was really a gift.
It's interesting because that could also, of course, be a metaphor for so many people. For me, it almost seems like a good exercise. For people just to get on the bus. There's so much hesitancy to not just get on the bus and see different groups of people, but especially in today's world, to actually talk to one another on the bus or anywhere else. Because you mentioned, media and social media and social change. It's just like, we don't talk to one another anymore. And being on the bus really helps, doesn't it?
It does. You share space, and that's the thing. And I mean, that takes me directly to the racial healing circles that I am focusing on in this documentary. It's the same thing as taking a bus. You all get into the circle and you share space. And I didn't mean to jump ahead to the film necessarily.
Go. We just go with the flow.
Okay, well, I just thought of this, that, I've never thought of the racial healing circle as being very similar to public transportation, but it is, because people come from all over, all walks of life. They come in because they want to go somewhere, just as they would if they were on a bus. They want to get someplace different than where they are. And in this case, it's very emotional. I'll back up and tell the story about Imaginary Walls, because that is my most recent endeavor. And after the election of 2016, when I saw, a lot of things starting to change, and, hate crimes and stuff, that all of a sudden people felt like they had a platform to express all this deep negativity. And I felt so bad, having worked for social justice my whole life and being that older age, as you mentioned. It was like, okay, I got to do something now, because we need to keep moving forward in a positive way. What can I do that has a form that is still solution driven, but it's longer, more in depth, will give people some opportunity? I actually ruminated on this for a couple of months, and I kept asking my my producer, who works with me a lot. I'd sit there, I'd go, Scott, what should we do? It's got to be good. It's got to be deep. It has to. And he'd go, I don't know. What should we do? He would say, this is maddening, what's going on around us. I would say, yes, it is. So we have the power, because we have voices. We know how to use this equipment. We know how to put it out in the world. Let's find a story. And then I remembered Kokoman and Aisha Clotti, who are the stars of this documentary. They had been sending me these newsletters. I had met them years before when I interviewed him for another program. And this beautiful newsletter came once a month, and they would talk about, the monthly racial healing circle will be held, blah, blah, blah. And I would go, racial healing circle, what are they talking about? And so I phoned them up. I said, can we talk? I really want to see if we could do something about this racial healing circle. And I sat with them, and they were just so sweet, and they're so brilliant and funny and in depth. And they've become, as the Hawaiians say, ohana now. They're family with me now. We just sit and share meals and love one another a huge amount. And what they did, they moved 30 years ago into an abandoned crack house in West Oakland. And the neighbors said, what are you doing? And they said, we're going to set up a healing center. We're going to be here, and we're going to make this. They had studied with Dr. Jerry John Paulsky and his attitudinal healing. They said, we're going to take what he does for illness into an impoverished neighborhood where people are doing drugs and hurting one another, because that's an illness, and we're going to work on that. And then it kept evolving, and it became much more just directly about racism, because it was all about racism all along. Why were these people doing what they did? They didn't have opportunities, I mean, they've transformed the neighborhood. Now there are sidewalks. Now there are trees. Now there's a beautiful community garden across the street. It's just this. Sometimes they say, if you build it, we will come, or they will come. And they also, you magnetize what you put out there. They just sat there. Sometimes nobody would come to the healing circles, and Kokoman and Aisha would still hold that circle themselves, to hold the commitment that they would sit and they would talk. And the way that it works, and the reason I think it works so well, is that there are these beautiful guidelines that they created that set up safety for anybody to come. Each person, there's like 10 guidelines, and they pass this paper with the guidelines around the circle. Each person reads one, and it's about no judgment, listening, understanding that everybody is there to speak their truth. And they use a talking piece, a talking stick, so that there's no crosstalk and there's no arguing. And it works beautifully. Every person I've spoken with uses the word safety, or says it's a safe space. So that's what we've been doing, is working on documenting about their lives, how they arrived at this point, and really looking at the people whose lives have been changed by this. And at the end of the film, we're going to have a downloadable link so that people can start their own racial healing circles wherever they are in their communities.
Wow. That is so true, because sometimes we just need to go into the areas where nobody else wants to go and
Right.
and really make the change happen.
Right.
Now,
Right.
when you said that, of course, I can feel it. And I know everybody listening and watching can feel it. And it makes perfect sense. Just go in there and do something.
Mm-hmm.
And at the same time, as you and I both know, not everybody does. I think overall, actually, too few people do.
Right.
So given your background with healing, whether it's racial healing, spiritual healing, why is that, and how can we assist people in just doing whatever it is they feel an intuition to do, however weird, strange, or impossible it may seem? What would you recommend to people?
Well, I think holding ourselves up as role models as best as possible, and continually telling stories of people who have overcome huge adversity. It's one of the things that I do on social media, is I try to post a lot of really positive stories. This person came from abject poverty and now they're, running a food bank or something like that, or, the kinds of things that you see people can do. And I think making it simple and keeping it from being so complex. And I think that's one of the reasons why Kokomon and Aisha have been so successful, because not only have they worked in Oakland, but they have been asked to start these circles in other parts of the world. So they have started centers in Mexico and South America and in Africa. And it's really changed people's lives in these other cultures as well, because some cultures, the divisions aren't racial, they are maybe tribal or socioeconomic. In Mexico, they don't have racial issues, they have really severe socioeconomic divisions, and they've tried to pull people together that way. So I think keeping it as simple and as friendly and as engaging, that word safety, that's a really big thing to help people see. I mean, I knew that when I was working as a healer too. How do you get people to really plumb the depths of their feelings and know that opening that up, maybe during what we call a healing crisis, maybe things come up that are really painful, but then you release them. And once you release them, they truly are gone, and they're gone for good. So, it's, I would say that's the way this works. And I also feel like that's why I'm using a film too, is that you can go into a theater or into a classroom, because I've talked with universities around the country who really want to use this film because racism is a big issue on campuses, and they don't have a lot of tools to work with. But you can go in to see a film, and it's passive. You sit back, you watch the film, and you go, okay, this is interesting, this is good. But it's not, nobody's pulling you out of your chair and making you say anything or do anything. So it gives you a chance to process. And I think that's why the media can work this way too. I also think that some of the things that are happening now in the world are getting people's attention, people who would otherwise not think, I don't really need to do anything. There's some very negative things happening, as we know, and some of them have really crossed a line. And everybody has that point at which they say, you know what, this is enough, no more. Maybe I'll get involved. Maybe I'll work for, social reform somewhere, voter education, or maybe I'll help. Maybe I'll hold preemie babies. You just don't know what it's going to be, but maybe I'll do something because I want the world to be a good place. So,
and I think the two things that you mentioned, keep it simple. Yeah. And you just gave examples on how to keep it simple. I mean, not everybody has to open a racial or, I don't know, colorful healing circle. It can be just helping another person across the street.
Right.
It can be, not throwing your trash on the ground, because clearly Mother Earth right now is a bit upset too, to say the least. So
Right.
there are little things that we all can do on a daily basis. And I have actually seen a lot more people do those little things.
Yeah.
I mean, so the other day I was talking to a father whom I've never met. We were at a play. My daughter was acting in it, and his son was acting in it. And all of a sudden he said, "Oh yeah, we're doing this project, just my son and I. So every Saturday we go around and we collect the trash in my neighborhood." And I'm like, okay. It's like came out of nowhere. And he said, and once we have our system down, I want to bring it into the school. So
Oh, that's so nice.
yeah. And then the other thing that you said, other than keep it simple and just, look around your neighborhood, you're talking about guidelines.
Yes.
The 10 guidelines. So do you believe that the 10 guidelines, as simple or as extravagant as they are, you said they help the circle. Could those guidelines also help other interactions?
Oh, absolutely. Funny you should mention that, because the board president, I'll bring in something about Billions Rising Foundation.
Okay.
My sweet dear friend Janet is Janet Lipsey. She is the president of the board of the Billions Rising Foundation now, because I stepped down to do these other things. And she was going to Uganda. She's gone to Uganda several times a couple of times to support, well, for a lot of reasons. But one of the things that she's done is there was a community she was working with there, and they had a great division in terms of how they saw this business, this entrepreneurial endeavor they were involved in. How should they move forward? Should they do it this way? Should they do it that way? And it was a big division. So she and I took the guidelines from the Racial Healing Circle, and we generalized them. And we took everything out about racism, and we made them about listening and respect and love and all the things that are in the regular, the guidelines for the racial healing circles. And then because she's the way she is, she made it beautiful. She printed them out. She embossed them. They're in plastic. She left them behind in Uganda for them to work with. And I think that these are the kinds of things that these are just the kinds of things that, Mr. Rogers teaches in his, you know what I mean? It's all very, very simple, basic, and it's a lot of the same things you find in all of the religions too. Love one another.
Yes.
Listen to one another, see one another.
Serve the community. I mean, they all have it.
Yeah. So, I think I think that's just really keeping it. There's always some way to engage people in a way that is non-threatening and makes them feel like they can be at home with you or at home with each other. It just always has to be gentle, and you can't push hard. That's one of the things I've learned all these years too. It's like you just don't push too hard. Just like with your children, it's like, okay, how do we navigate all of this and not push too hard and get some really sweet results?
Now, when you're saying don't push too hard.
Yes.
Of course, I agree. I couldn't agree more. We walk the balance. We try to listen. We try to explain. And while you were just saying that, one of the things that you mentioned to me was, of course, that when you got into the TV, film, documentary industry, it was still pretty male dominated. And I think usually then the assumption would be that you have to be pushy, that you have to not be nice and, cuddly and all of that. So how did you deal with that? Because that was an environment in which you were the odd lady out, the odd person out, and you had to assert yourself, but you're not coming across as pushy.
No. And here's the thing. I really believe in the power of yin, the power of the female, and that we don't need to adopt the yang or the male energy in order to go forward in our lives. This has been a huge part of my life, is to learn to speak softly. And I don't carry a big stick, that old Teddy Roosevelt. You just speak softly. You engage with whoever you have to engage with, and you keep it really loving and kind. And I feel like sometimes women really trip over themselves when they try to be like men. There's just no reason for it. We are the goddess. We are the ones here on earth who are meant to be holding life, holding children, holding, the love. If it wasn't for us, who knows where, well, we know. we would,
No,
we wouldn't be, we don't even want to talk about it. But it's even back then, the way I found to push through, I didn't even have to push through. It's a way of dissolving walls, instead of pushing, you dissolve them. You make something so agreeable, and it's not to be manipulative, but it's to present who you are, what you want. Hi, here I am. And I'll admit back then I was a lot more macho than I am now, because I was young. I was in my 20s. I had a big camera on my shoulder, that kind of thing. And, but I did still find that getting through to people was so much easier if I was myself. And myself is a woman, as opposed to, I didn't dress like a man. I would dress up. Even back then, I would dress up to go to productions, as opposed to, I knew women who would, put their baseball cap on backwards and put on clothes like a man. It's like, no, let's yin yang. Let's balance this out somewhere here, and bring the female, bring that sensibility, that softness. And I would do mothery things too. I mean, everybody knows. People who work for me always say, "Well, she's going to feed you. She's going to take care of you."
Yes, of course.
Yeah. So even when I was in my 20s, I worked for David Brower from Friends of the Earth. He was just sweet enough to hire me when I was only 26 or something. Gave me this huge job to go to New York City for the first conference on the fate of the Earth. I had a crew of like 25 people or something. It was just giant. And I was trying not to be overwhelmed. And I thought, okay, I'm going to do some things for the crew so that they really love this. It was going to be long, all day for 3 days, day and night, concerts at night. So I hired a chef, and I did meal planning with him here in California. And he was so good with budgets and all that. So we went to New York, and he went downstairs at the Cathedral of St. John the Divine in New York, Upper West Side. And there's a kitchen down there we had permission to use. And he would cook all day long.
Oh, wow.
I know. And the New Yorkers are like, wow, is everybody from California just like you? And I had a massage therapist too. I was like, yes, they're all just like me. But, it was just the best experience. People just loved it, because it was sweet. I was being kind. I was helping them. I was being nurturing. So I think even back then, there was only a few times when I ran into some funny things. I was a camera woman on a big crew. We were following some bicycle races, and we went down into the South, and I was, up on the scaffolding with my camera, and all the rest, it just all men. It was like 9 men and me. And the mothers of some of these boys who were on the bicycles would come to me, and they would say, how do you feel being with all these men? How can you stand it? And I was like, well, look, these guys helped me with everything, and I helped them. I brought a bunch of music with me to play for them, so it was unusual back then. But
so pretty much, I love when you said, you were just being you.
Yeah.
Because that's like one of my big things, be you, and you can perform at higher levels, you can achieve a lot of things, but whenever we give up our own selves, that's when things go not so good.
Yeah.
And from the whole way that you were talking, it's almost an iffy subject, because you were saying, I just did what I did, and thereby I attracted the outcome. So are you then, in a sense, proposing that by being you, even if you may have some disappointments, some challenges, but if you just stick to who you are, that you're actually utilizing or even creating the law of attraction?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I think of it as the flow of attraction, that, you get into your own river, your own flow, and you just, I still every day have to work with keeping my mind positive, because I truly believe our thoughts become matter, our thoughts become things. And, keeping happy, positive thoughts if I think a negative thought about what's going on politically, then I flip that around and I say, and these are the indicators that are going to show many more people that love is the answer.
Mm.
So it starts with the mind, and then it moves into the body language, the actions. How, you said, we don't talk to one another that much. I am making it an absolute practice every day to talk to people wherever I go. If I'm in a grocery store or, wherever I am, have a chit chat with anybody. If you see them doing something, at a vending machine, they takes their money, whatever. Laugh, share experiences, be there, cheer people up.
Yeah, sometimes you can have the best conversations that way.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
sometimes you just say hi to somebody and all of a sudden it goes into, oh, where are you from? What are you? And they tell you their life story, you tell them yours, and you actually have a connection. It's amazing.
Yes. So, I really do believe that we draw in what we put out, and we draw in what we create within ourselves too. And it's not like there weren't disappointments, especially back in the early days in television. I would bid on a project, and then a man would bid on the project. I would dress up, like I say, I would dress up for my work, and he would schlep in his, sweat clothes. He'd get the job because the people, as much as they loved me, the client, they would say, "Oh, you're so wonderful. Thank you for coming in."
Right.
They would trust his male authority over mine, and I think that's been shifting over these years, but still, I find now in my work, and I think it's age too, I am now, the elder stateswoman or something. And, I think that's what happens with us. We grow authority as we get older. And, people really listen now when I talk, and I've raised all the money I need for my film, which is just a miracle.
Congratulations.
And a lot of the donors came from Facebook because I post all the time about what I'm doing, how the film's coming along, these, kind of day in the life of the film. Here's the back, behind the scenes, here's what we're doing. So, and then I intersperse that with, hey, look what this little boy did yesterday. He helped this woman up the stairs.
Yes.
Just as many positive stories as I can find. And people have followed the film, and I said something about somebody had put some money in, and all of a sudden I got this huge influx of donors, anonymous donors. A lot of them are like, okay, even cash. They're like, I don't even want to give you a check. I'm just going to give you this cash. I'm like, okay, that sounds great. It's pretty amazing. Yeah. But I also have to say the subject matter at this time, in history, I think the subject of healing racism, I think it's selling itself as well. But there is a lot more trust. I think women are finding there's a lot more trust in their inherent power than there was 20 or 30 years ago.
I think the other piece, though, is also that the way that you approach it, it's, even though you're also a businesswoman, you needed money to make the movie, you need money to live, but you're still coming from a place of, I guess servitude would be the right word. That's the only word that comes to mind.
Yes, it's seva. It's service. Yeah, to come from a place of service, and so that people understand that this is really about service. This is really about, if you donate to this film, it will be helping at a global level to, help to end this tribalism that we have within us. It's a tool. It's a practice that people can use that they will find, not difficult and really get some rewards from. So, I think that's very true, that I always feel like I am really just the one who's bringing it through, that I'm not the end product at all, Yeah.
The vessel, right?
The vessel, exactly.
Yeah. So then, for those people who are healers, want to do a spiritual business of whatever type or sort, very often we find that their challenge is not as much being themselves. Their challenge is not as much as having the idea. it is actually asking for money. You know, whether it's somebody to pay them for their services, and you've been through it all. So,
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, because you had your healing centers, I mean,
Yeah.
out there in
I
Hawaii.
only laugh because I had to get better and better at it over time, you know.
Yeah.
And it really, very, very early on with my healing practice, I had a client who was an excellent businesswoman. And when I told her how much I charged, she said, "Oh, that's ridiculous. You're so good at this. You need to charge a lot more than that." And I was like, "Oh, okay." You know, again, I think when you see it in a larger perspective, that, you know, God or goddess or the universe, you know, spirits coming through you, you're serving spirit. So you're serving the one, you're serving the many. You know how Ram Dass speaks of the one and the many.
Mm-hmm.
And when you see, that's the same kind of perspective as being of service as a filmmaker, is you're not just paying me, you're paying for the bigger picture. You're paying so that I can continue to do this work and help other people, and do the work of spirit. So
Yeah.
that's a good framework. I think that's what I found.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. So, one more question.
Yes.
I was going to do two, but I'm going to do one, because
Okay.
I think the misfit question you sort of already answered with everything that you've been doing.
Yeah.
You're always the odd person out in a sense, but in the world that we live in today, whether you would talk to yourself as a young person, or the best advice that you've ever given your kids, or anybody right now, what is the advice or the thought that you would give to somebody today so that they can live their potential, that they can be all that they want to be? What would you tell them?
That everything they need really is already inside them, that they just have to believe that and access that. You know, I used to tell in my retreats that I led in Hawaii, I would say, you are absolutely a part of God. You are a part of all that is good in the universe. And if you love God, then it doesn't make any sense if you don't love yourself. And self-love, of course, is not narcissism. Self-love just means I'm doing the best I can. I'm really proud of myself. I am, you know, the embodiment of spirit. I am the embodiment of God. And I am human. I make mistakes. I forgive myself, and I'll just keep moving forward. So I think that I know it's kind of a long-winded way of saying what the advice is, but it really is, believe that you were born with really innate gifts. They're already in there. And there's a lot of things that happen in our world that unlearn those or keep those from being expressed. Push all of that aside and go inside and really find what you want. And hold that picture. Keep your eyes on the prize, like they say. We would work in my retreats. We would do a big painting every, at the beginning of the retreat. Here's where I am now. Here's where I want to be. Here's the path. Here are the blocks. I see these blocks. I know what these blocks are. Work your way through those blocks. Visualize them dissolving. I did a lot of the meridian tapping, if you know what that is, that EFT. It was like, let's really dissolve that block and see if you can get past that one. And then you're facing the next one. What's that one look like? So just keep a real picture of where you want to go, and let yourself know that even if it takes time, because it does take time, don't be impatient, but just know you keep moving in that direction. And the universe sends big surprises. You never know. You could be heading down this path. I'm sure you know this. Heading down this path, and all of a sudden, kaplonk! Here comes here's an opportunity right in front of you, and you're like, oh my goodness, where did this come from? I had no idea this was going to happen. Should I take this opportunity? Should I push it aside because it's not on my path? And the answer is, really explore it. Look at it. How does it feel? Do you like the way it feels if you think about it? go inside and visualize what it's like if you do that.
Mhm.
You know, people get really distracted too, and diffuse. And the other image I worked with was everything you need to get to that goal. If you put it across a lake, put it in your little canoe. And if it doesn't belong in the canoe to get to that goal, don't put it in, leave it out. And so we worked with that too.
That reminds me of the closet, that we never clean out.
Oh yeah.
Sorry, but when you said don't put it in
the door and throw something
my
in.
closet right now, I'm like, oh my God, do I really keep this? No, I don't. So yeah, I think that's important because also when you're talking about, distractions, and there's going to be disappointment, it's going to take longer than we think. I just had a conversation with somebody about that, they have a great book idea and they're like, well, I thought this was going to be really good. I was like, well, it takes time. You need to get all the right people in the right location, and you need to put it all together.
Right.
You know,
and I really believe also, Natalie, in divine timing, and I know you do too. And I've been thinking about this regarding imaginary walls, because when I first started out, it was like April 2017 was when I first really had my first meeting with Kokoman and Aisha. And I thought, okay, we're going to get this done. But you know what? As the clock has ticked, the world has gotten to a place where there's way more opening for this film than there was in any month of 2017. So, there's a plan that's bigger than me. And that's what it took to get this far. And I've learned so much, and I've been watching the world change and get more open and ready for a film like this. And so it may be the same with that whoever's book, let all those pieces line up, and by the time you're really ready, the world will be ready for you.
Absolutely. So you've talked about imaginary walls, you've talked about the spiritual healing center, your experiences, the work that you do. If somebody wants to know more, whether it's imaginary walls or the many other things that you hinted at and explained a little bit, how can they best get in touch with you?
They can email me at anitacasalina@gmail.com. And that's, I respond to emails. And imaginarywallsfilm.com has some information about the film. They can come over to Facebook, because I post a lot all the time.
Yes, you do, and they're good posts.
Yeah, Facebook and some Instagram too. Instagram is sort of a second go-to. I found that I have sort of a big community on Facebook. And but emailing is fine, and however they want to reach out, I would be happy.
Well, and of course everybody will see the information below as well. So
good.
Anita, thank you. I know that time is
you.
always precious. I know you're doing a whole lot of really amazing things. I appreciate you taking the time tonight, and I'm hoping that everybody who sees this, at whatever time zone they're in, at whatever time frame they're in, whatever mindset that they're in, that they'll take a lot of good information away, just like I always do.
Oh,
So
thank you, Natalie. And thank you for always doing the work you do. I really appreciate you. You never stop either, and you're just filled with ideas. You're always coming up with something else that's going to help, especially women. And I just absolutely love it.
Thank you.
Keep going too, okay?
I will.
Sisters, right?
I know. Thank you. Yes. And everybody who's listening, remember, and I've hinted at that just now with Anita, to me, time is always the most precious gift. And you, Anita, just spent time with us. You just spent time by listening. Maybe you'll re-listen to it. So thank you for your time. It's really the most precious gift that we all have. And so until next time, then, I hope you're going to be a misfit and make your dream come true. I'll talk to you later. Thank you, Anita.